from Borger, Texas,
Here is that wild cowboy,
Stan the Lariat Hansen.
This coming Monday, April 26th, 80's Wrestling Con's virtual signing series Monday Night Virtual welcomes WWE Hall of Famer Stan the Lariat Hansen. You can catch all the action live on the Facebook page from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and there's still time to head to 80'swrestlingcon.com to purchase a photo to have signed live by Stan Hansen. Again, visit 80'swrestlingcon.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 80's Wrestling, the podcast. We got an outstanding show for you today. As always, I'm Jumpin' Jay, and I'm joined by the lighter side of the ring, Mr. Tommy Fierro.
Hey, what's going on, Jay? How are you, man?
Tommy, I'm doing fantastic. I'm beyond excited. We have waiting in the wings two gentlemen who are doing huge things, not only in the world of professional wrestling, which we love, but in the world of television, documentaries, filming. We have Evan Husney and Jason Eisener, the creators of Viceland's hit, and I mean hit series, The Dark Side of the Ring. Evan and Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to 80's Wrestling, the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey, man, I gotta tell you guys first and foremost before we start. Not that many things over the last few years in the wrestling industry has been exciting. That's why we do 80's Wrestling, the podcast. We relive our childhood era when wrestling was, for us, was great. And, over the last few years, there hasn't been many things in the wrestling industry that has excited me personally. But one of the things, if not one of the only things that has piqued my interest and something that I gravitated towards was the dark side of the ring. And over the last few years, man, you guys have really, when I say hit it out of the park, I mean, that's an understatement. And you guys have really captured the imaginations of fans all over the world with this hit series. And I know you started in 2019. First question is, going into this, was this something that you guys thought would turn into what it is today? Was it something you just wanted to put a couple of documentaries together and see how it would go, or was the plan going into it that it would be a several series hit that it is now?
Well, this is Evan, by the way. Thank you very much for saying that too. I appreciate that you watch the show and love it. The original idea, I think, first, Jason, was that we were, we just wanted to make a documentary about Bruiser Brody. That was kind of the original concept. We just got super enamored with Brody as a performer, and we were super curious of like who the real, Frank Goodish is behind that wrestler. And of course, the tragedy of what happened to him in Puerto Rico. And we thought that would just be the basis of a really compelling documentary to kind of re-examine all of that. And that just kind of organically spiraled into, like, when we started pitching Vice TV, the show, it was just like, it turned into, well, what other stories could you tell in this world? And let's develop it out into more of a show. And so then we started to really kind of think about other stories that we could put into a season of into a television show that sort of checked the similar boxes, stories that involve wrestlers of the past that kind of live two lives. Here's their wrestling character, and here's who they are in real life, or maybe there's some sort of controversy at the center of it, or a very just fascinating tragic story. And so that's kind of, we started to just put it together, and it kind of just grew into the season of the show. But honestly, I thought when we did season 1, I thought that would be it, up until the moment that they wanted us to do another one.
Yeah, and also too, like, even before we dove down this path with doing the documentary series, like before this, Evan and I, we come from like the film world, and we had been studying, like, kind of rediscovering, like all this like wrestling history and diving into it. And we thought, man, this would make such a great like narrative scripted television series, kind of like, The Sopranos meets Boogie Nights, but all within like the territory, like days of professional wrestling. But when we tried to pitch that, like in Hollywood, it would just go over every studio executive's head, and like wrestling was kind of just seen as this lowbrow form of entertainment. But we knew that like people can relate to all the stories that, that these wrestlers are going through. And, we just need to, show people what the wrestling world is just the backdrop for all these like crazy like events that like take place in these wrestlers' lives. So, when it couldn't get the narrative idea out there, we thought, let's make a documentary series and see if that strikes a chord, and it did, and we just kept going with it.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I think your guys' series has been so successful is, Jason, you just kind of alluded to it right there. Yes, these are stories about people in the world of wrestling, but at its core, you're telling stories about humans, which all people can relate to. For example, my wife, not a wrestling fan, doesn't understand why I love wrestling. If I have Monday Night Raw, she will not sit on the couch. If I'm watching Dark Side of the Ring, she is right there next to me, glued to the television, because you're telling these stories in a way that grabs the human side of everybody, not just wrestling fans. With that being said, with the success of this documentary, is there still plans or hopes to parlay that into a series like you were just talking about, Jason?
I hope so. That that's always the goal. We have like movie ideas based in this world, like television series ideas. This isn't going to be this is only the beginning in terms of the kind of stories we want to tell within the wrestling world. Like we definitely have plans and want to develop more cinematic wrestling stories.
Yeah, I think that's the definitely the next step for us, is that in doing now after season 3 airs, there's going to be 30 of these episodes, which is hard to imagine, but that's a lot. And I think for us the next logical step is we would love to take one of them to the big screen, or to a television series in a dramatic way, because that's truthfully, honestly, what our goal was from the beginning.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. You said after this season 3 there would be 30 episodes. I still think, just if you look at the history of the wrestling business, I still think you haven't even scratched the surface of all the different stories that you guys can still tell. You guys could probably do 20 seasons of this. But yeah, man, if being on the big screen would be absolutely phenomenal. Season 3 kicks off on May the 6th. A really, really, really awesome season. So far, you guys have announced an episode on Brian Pillman, The Ultimate Warrior, which I'm really, really looking forward to. Dynamite Kid, same thing. Grizzly Smith. I mean, these episodes are very, very, very interesting that you have coming up. Collision in Korea. My question is for the average, fan sitting at home watching these episodes that don't know all the hard work that goes behind even making one episode. What is, without giving too much away, what is like a day or a month or 6 weeks or 2 months look like for you getting one episode in the can?
Well, we're always we're working on many episodes at the same time. So at any given moment, we're usually working on between we're probably working on 8 episodes at a given time, because we're either filming 4 episodes of the documentary interviews traveling around the country, and that's that could be its own Dark Side of the Ring series just in terms of filming this and during the pandemic over the last year. But so we're either filming 4 episodes of documentary simultaneously, and also have at least 4 episodes in the process of post-production, editing them and preparing them to shoot our reenactment scenes or what have you. So So any given day is can be quite chaotic in terms of managing just, all these stories at the same time, and there's a lot of moving parts, as you can imagine. And thank God we have such a talented, skilled team of editors and producers and other and other folks that help us get this across the finish line. Because it is kind of, when you think about it, I mean, we're ostensibly making 14 documentaries in under a year, so it is a big production. It's a big, just like factory assembly line.
Yeah, and not only that too, we're doing this all during the pandemic, so it's like the whole traveling situation is really crazy and intense, and we've had to learn every aspect of COVID protocols for filming production. And, that's just created its own, we thought making last season was tough on its own, just making, the 10 episodes, but now, with the pandemic and, doing more episodes, but we've managed to make it work. Like it's been, and thank God everyone's been safe, and, it's been working.
Yeah, and we, normally we would be flying everywhere. We'd fly to Hawaii, go interview Don Morocco. Then we got to go fly to, Las Vegas. Just go around and do all these interviews. But this season, that's been, we have to still maintain a production schedule, but we can't do that. And so what we've been doing is we've been, me and myself and a couple of the of our camera guys we just got an RV, and we just drove the whole thing. So we've driven around the country 2 or 3 times now, literally across country, going on these epic road trips in order to get these interviews. So that's also been an experience in and of itself.
Yeah, and we like after season 2, like our dream for Evan and I was like, man, if we ever did a season 3, we'd love to go to Japan and shoot interviews there. That was the dream. And then, with everything, we couldn't travel that far, but we still managed to get interviews in Japan, even though we didn't get to go, but we got to Skype in for them and work with a team over there that helped us film those interviews.
Well, I have to imagine with the success of this series right now, when you make a phone call to someone and say, we'd like to have you on for Dark Side of the Ring, they're familiar with the show, so they're probably excited to partake. But in that first season, when you guys were unknown, what kind of reception did you get when you would call these wrestlers and say, hey, we're filming this show, we'd love to get you on camera? Were people on board right away, or did it take some kind of hustle and motivating on your end to get them to agree to do it?
Well, yeah, going back to the first season, definitely there was a lot of, had a lot of having to explain. We didn't have the name Dark Side of the Ring during producing season 1, and it was kind of just like this more ambiguous, like, we're doing this show about this thing, and it kind of became, it was definitely challenging to get people on board then, and I think what really saved us during the season 1 time, I think what really bought us the street cred was that, we had already filmed the Bruiser Brody episode. That was our pilot. So that was kind of, we were able to kind of show people that, or we would just talk about it. Like, yeah, we did a doc about Bruiser Brody, and we interviewed his family. And I think wrestlers just respect Bruiser Brody so much, and the fact that that was the episode we did first. And I think that bought us a lot of credibility. And, I mean, I know it did with Bret Hart. Bret Hart at first was like, I don't need to tell my, Montreal Screwjob story again. And then it was like, oh, you guys had Brody on the show? Well, okay, I'm in, type of thing. But then going into season 3, I mean, sometimes, you call up wrestlers, you say you're with Dark Side of the Ring, but it is still kind of a divisive thing. I mean, I've had wrestlers tell me flat out, no, that that show only talks about the negative, and these stories shouldn't be told, and then you get the click, or sometimes they get scared, it's like, oh no, what did I do, and why am I on the show? But it is still challenging, and it is still a process to build trust with anyone and do that,
Yeah, and sometimes too, even the family members are not so much aware of our show, and there's one in particular that we really wanted, and she turned us down, like, right off the top. She's like, I've never told my story, and I don't want to tell it. But then she watched the Von Erich episode, and she was really close with them, and she saw how we handled that, and she called us back and was like, okay, like, I'm interested. And so that was really
and Owen. Yeah. I think like the Owen episode too from last season. I think because you're totally right, Jason. Like, family members, don't, they've never really had much of a platform to tell their story. No one's really asked, and they're not performers, and so to be like, hey, we want to, put you in front of a bunch of cameras and have you tell a very intimate or difficult story. They're not really used to that, and I think that they can find. I think the Owen episode in particular, when now having that to show other family members, I think it does give them strength to tell their story because of Martha and her strength in telling her story, and that's helped us so much. Just like Brody, just like Brody's widow Barbara did for us in season 1. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you guys going into season 3, you can feel the momentum behind you guys. This is a hit show now. How cool is it for you guys? Because obviously you guys are big wrestling fans to be doing this, to have the top tier guys in our industry in 2021, because they're watching it, and I'm sure that some of them have messaged you guys privately and gave you feedback on the show. How cool is it knowing, because they're watching 100%, that all the big names from all the different companies in today's wrestling business is watching your show and giving you guys feedback on it? Well,
as a fan, it's amazing and surreal at the same time, because a lot of these guys. I mean, I was obsessed with wrestling growing up, like in a deeply profound way, and so. Like, owning action figures of all of these guys, seeing them when they came through Minneapolis, and, all that stuff. And then to know that, like, X amount of years later, decades later, I'm kind of at the center of, my action figure collection, interacting with all these guys I had toys of. And also, or even in the most extreme case, sitting on the other end of a camera, and kind of being a dare I say, like a pseudo therapist as they're working through, some of their darkest moments. And but it's also cool just to get the feedback, and to talk, and it was really cool. Even, I think kind of the pinnacle of that for me, going into this season is, we're doing the Brian Pillman episode, and then, we had the opportunity to talk to Stone Cold Steve Austin for that episode, and I mean, I just was a massive Steve Austin fan growing up, and just to kind of come full circle, with him in that regard, and to hear that, he was that, like, there was a lot. He's checked out a bunch of episodes of our show and asked us all these, questions about what did you find here, would you, and then just that was awesome. It was just really cool.
You guys have kind of had a chance to go back and rewatch some old episodes on the Dark Side of the Ring Confidential, which is an awesome look because we get to hear you guys tell your side of the story. We get to see some never-before-seen footage. And during the Abdullah the Butcher episode, you guys talked about how strange it was being in his house, being in that one room, how he kind of chased Jason around the house for a little bit. What are some other, like, just strange or unique experience that you guys had that maybe didn't make the show but stands out to you as people, as fans? Is there somebody you interviewed that was not at all like you expected, or something odd or wacky kind of came out of nowhere that you didn't expect?
Oh, well, that one's definitely up on the top of the list. But.
Definitely one of them. For me also, it's like sometimes, like, there, we do a lot of research, but there's some people you can't find out everything about them before you enter their homes. And when we went to go visit Tiny the Terrible to interview him for the New Jack episode, that was like an incredible, surreal experience. And when he, like, took us into his bedroom, and you saw, like, when he opened the door, and we just saw, like, 1,000 homemade like action figures that he made himself and customized, and he created this whole universe. He had this whole universe that he created, and we just like walked into it, into his bedroom, and that's one of the, I'll never forget that. I'll be telling that story to my great grandchildren.
I think that one for sure probably takes the cake. But I think one of the other ones that comes to mind for me too is we talked about it on Confidential, was Earl Hebner, and that story we told on Confidential is a shoot where literally he thought that we were Canadian assassins that were going to that going to snuff him out for his role in the Montreal Screwjob, and that was for real. I mean, that was a very kind of scary circumstance, but I think at the same time, as documentary filmmakers, and paying attention to that, it's like, wow, there's some deep-seated trauma there that Earl has, and it really kind of showed me that, as much as Brett has talked about being the victim of the Montreal Screwjob, I really kind of believe that Earl is like the number one victim of that, because he still wears the trauma of the Screwjob like every day, and like where Brett and Vince, they've all turned it in. They've all, Brett and Vince have kind of all worked it back into the storyline now, when they had the match and they did the whole thing. But for Earl, it's still something that haunts him because he had to betray, one of his best friends. It's like, it's like something you'd see like in Breaking Bad or something, or like, I don't know, like it's like, so that to me was like very unexpected, and wow, like that, this really, shows you what this is all about.
What was obviously there's some of these subjects hit home hard for the family members throughout the first two seasons. Was there a particular episode that was, obviously you guys are humans too, and you have feelings and emotions. Was there an episode for you guys in the first two seasons that was the hardest one for you guys to film personally?
I mean, there's a few of them, but I would say, and you probably agree, as doing the story about the Benoit family, that was probably, I feel just the emotional weight of taking on a story like that, and like a filmmaker could work on just that story alone for a couple of years, and we had all these other episodes that we had to make, but that show we spent a lot of time with it, and it was a journey to get it into production. There was a lot of trust building and a lot of stuff that went behind the scenes for probably over a year, building up to doing that episode. It was talked about being made for the first season, but it just would never have worked. Like we needed to really prove ourselves and build trust with family members, to be able to tell and people who were the closest to that story. Had we done it in the first season, we wouldn't have gotten the access that you needed to properly tell that story.
Well, also, and it's that the emotions, in that story are so raw or the way that they appear on screen, because in many ways, you as viewers are seeing, and we as filmmakers as we're shooting it are really seeing some of the first times that these folks have really opened up about this story. Mainly, and I think that's what kind of made it really one of the more intense emotional experiences. Because I remember like interviewing David Benoit, and that to me seemed like really probably the first time he had ever, maybe to anyone, spoke about this, his own true feelings about what had happened. And similarly, with a lot of the former WWE stars too, because honestly, they've been conditioned for so long to never talk about this, to never mention it, and then I think if everyone is kind of, on that wavelength, they're not talking about it amongst themselves. And so I think for that, I think it was just like a huge release and a huge cathartic experience, like for everyone. And that I think made it really extra heavy, because it was like, okay, here's the first time we're all going to be kind of, dealing with this and like unpacking this. So that was heavy. And I think, right up close to that for me, obviously the Owen episode was very emotional. But also the Gino Hernandez story was really emotional because here's a family that's for over 30 years that's been wondering what happened to their loved one, to their son, to their husband, to their father, and there was no answers. And then as we were digging into this story, we got some answers, and then being able to have that information to give to the family, to help provide some closure after 30 years. That was a really heavy experience, like having the police photos or something, that they had never seen, or, had all these questions about, that was heavy. That was a really, really, really heavy experience.
One of the reasons fans of our age fell in love with wrestling in the 80s and early 90s was their ability to tell a compelling story. Storytelling has always been a part of wrestling. You guys are tremendous storytellers in the way that you cover these topics, but also in the way that you present them on the screen. Your filming style is very compelling, how you guys backlight actors who are representing these characters so you see their silhouettes as they go about it. I absolutely love it. It's very engaging. One, how do you guys settle on that style of filming? And two, what does it take to find somebody who can play the part of a road warrior or somebody who can play the part of a Macho Man Randy Savage? You guys have open casting calls? Do you see people on independent shows? What's that part of the filming process like?
Yeah, well, we shoot it all in Toronto, Canada, so we're for the most part limited to casting there, and we link up with local indie wrestling promotions and look at their rosters, or we're scouring just Instagram, looking at gyms in Toronto looking for bodybuilders, or and in a lot of cases there will be people we get that have never acted before in their lives, but it's what you're seeing on the screen, it's all shot in slow motion, it's backlit, but if we were to turn on the lights, you would just see it. So it's kind of simple with the sets and the costumes there, but the way we developed the idea of it was when we were working on the Bruiser Brody pilot, we were sitting in Evan's apartment in New York, and we were trying to figure out what's going to be our vision for telling these stories. And we were really inspired by Errol Morris's film, the Thin Blue Line, where you just see he has these kind of backlit reenactments that are just simple and classy. And we were kind of just getting into the vibe of that. And then we just took Evan's Bruiser Brody action figure and Tony Atlas action figure, and I took a flashlight and just flipped my phone into slow-mo, and I was just filming just these shots of I was kind of storyboarding them in a way, and I was just moving the flashlight, and I showed it to Evan, and he thought, wow, we could actually, at first we thought, man, maybe we could just do these reenactments for the action figures. This looks pretty cool. But then we thought, well, no, let's take this idea and get wrestlers or bodybuilders, get the body type right, because back then with these larger than life characters that we grew up with, you could just see Hulk Hogan's silhouette or the Undertaker silhouette, and exactly who that person is just from the silhouette and maybe a little bit of their color combinations that they have, and so that worked so great for us, because we knew if we could just get the silhouette kind of right and just have that little bit of the out of focus sort of blurred memory sort of vibe that we try to do, is trying to make people feel like they're watching these fainted memories from the past. And so hopefully with the effect of the music and the interviews and those reenactments, that people feel like they're transported back into those moments.
Yeah, and it's the highest risk part too of I think the show, because you don't want to, misfire on the casting. And, there is a lot of, these guys are iconic, larger than life characters. And, that's part of the reason people paid money to go see them, is because you wouldn't see people that look like this on a daily basis. So for us, it's like, we, it's kind of funny, because I think if anyone were to see what these actors really look like with the lights turned on and the focus sharp, I think a lot of people wouldn't believe that, how much the shadows and the soft focus actually add to creating that illusion, because there's just no way, So, so I mean, I think the concept that Jason landed on with the action figures and making it as surreal as possible, making it slow motion, making it dreamlike, and that whole thing, I think, thank God we landed on that, because that, I think, really, adds so much to it. It elevates it, I think, and because normal reenactments can be kind of corny or cheesy, and I think if you try to make reenactments look like real life, it's not going to work. You have to make them elevated and surreal and take it in a different direction. Then I think it can work. If it's not lifelike, and I think that sometimes we've had a really hard time finding actors to play some of these characters, and sometimes it comes in at the literal last possible second, where, oh my God, we're shooting tomorrow and we still haven't found our so and so, it's always a rat race to cast all these characters, but somehow, thank God, knock on wood, we've been able to do it.
Yeah, and also a good example, when we were at WrestleMania a couple of years ago in New Orleans, and we were filming interviews there for the show, and we went to WrestleMania, and I don't know, went to the bathroom or something and came out and saw this guy who looked exactly like Macho Man, Randy Savage, and I just beamed up to him, and I put my phone in someone's hand, and I said, could you just film a slow motion shot of me and Randy here? And we did this slow motion shot, and I took it to Evan back at our seats, and I was like, dude, this is our Randy here. we gotta book this guy and bring him to Toronto, and we did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did. And his wife had made all the Randy's iconic costumes for him, because he's a cosplayer. He's a Randy Savage cosplayer, and it's like, that's kind of the sweet spot. You got to find the cosplayers and get them booked. But yeah, he was absolutely fantastic. And I actually remember when we first shot that stuff, and with that actor Brandon, who played Randy Savage, and I remember sending it to Bruce Pritchard, I think, when we first had it, and he just was like, whoa, that's eerie, because that's Randy, and just in terms of all the close-up shots, and so that was cool. That was one time where we were able to actually get it a little more in focus, because he was so right on the money.
Well, and anytime you can find an actor that has his own Macho Man costume ready to go, that's a plus, no doubt.
Yeah.
So it was unbelievable. Yeah, we had an instance. We had a really heartbreaking instance here on as far as costumes goes on season 3, which is we're doing the Collision in Korea episode, and we cast an actor as Ric Flair, because Ric Flair was on the trip, and we wanted to get this shot of when Ric Flair comes out to the ring for the match. And our costume designer looks at us and is like, "Oh man, gonna have to make this robe." It's like such an elaborate, one of Rick's more elaborate purple robes. And I hit up, I actually hit up, I think I hit up Conrad, who obviously is deep into the wrestling memorabilia world. And I was like, "Do you know anybody that has this robe, or do you personally have this robe?" And he hooked me up with the owner of that robe. So oh my God, we're going to get the original robe that Ric Flair wore in North Korea for the episode for the actor to wear. How cool is that? And then obviously during the pandemic, it gets put in FedEx, and it's delayed, for 10 days after we shot it. So we didn't get to use it in the episode. And it was so heartbreaking. But our costume designer, Sarah, unbelievable. In like a matter of a day, put together, you know, a out of focus friendly version of the robe that is mind blowing that she was able to put that together, and it looks great.
Incredible.
But there was a chance, if stars had aligned, that we would have had, you know, that original same robe, which I thought would have been amazing.
That would have been amazing. I just have to ask, because I know when you film a lot of the reenactments, you obviously have a wrestling ring on set. And just knowing how wrestling fans operate, what runs through their brain, I have to know, has there been an Evan versus Jason match at some point?
Many.
A lot of them haven't happened in the ring, though.
Yeah. We usually go out and work the crowd. I think
Evan as being the baby face of the match, by the way.
No, I'm the heel.
He's a heel. He's a good heel.
Yeah. No, so yeah, I think it was when we were filming the Brody pilot, there's a scene there when we were filming with Dutch Mantell, and it's in the very beginning of the episode. We actually got a ring set up. It's some armory in Tennessee. And that was my first ever experience really being able to, like, you know, do whatever I want with a ring, you know? And so when it was all set up, you know, I also, it's, you know, to mention, you know, our good departed friend, Joseph Hudson, Josephus, R.I.P., he was there as well. And we had the ring set up, and then immediately I'm just like, you know, Mickey Mark here, you know, just running into the ring, running the ropes. My first time ever in a wrestling ring. I've been thinking about this moment for 20 plus years, you know, and I'm thinking literally that being in a wrestling ring is more akin to, I know it sounds ridiculous because you always hear about how hard it is, but I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be, you know, more like a trampoline. You know, I'm like the most ignorant, naive Mickey Mark guy there, whoever was. And I literally start jumping around in this thing. I'm like, ooh, this doesn't feel good at all, you know? And then Dutch Mantell sees me marking out in the ring, and he basically says to Josephus, all right, slam the kid now, you know? And so then Josephus is full upside down, you know, puts extra weight into it and drops me dead weight. I don't know how to fall either. And I'm feeling like the shock through my spine all the way down to my legs. I'm probably minorly concussed, and I'm just staring there at the ceiling, and it actually reevaluated every single bump I had ever seen in the history of wrestling. You know, like immediately flashing through my eyes, I was thinking about Mick Foley and thinking about Hell in a Cell. I was thinking about all these different moments, and I was like, I cannot fucking believe these guys do that. I cannot believe it. You know, this is what this feels. It shocked me at how intense it felt. And then, of course, like over time, when we have the ring at our disposal in the studio, you know, since we're working with wrestlers, you know, wrestlers, like all they want to do is just grab people who don't wrestle and try and wrestle them. You know, that's like their favorite activity. And so, you know, there's been many a time. Let me show you a hip toss, or let me show you how to you know, take this bump and that bump. And so there's been times where, you know, we've you know, been putting various moves or various things. But there's not much time, you know, in between the shots and whatnot. But yeah, if you have a ring there, it's gonna get someone's gonna be running the rope for sure.
Yeah, like that day with Josephus, like he put us both through it, and like he slammed me around as well too. And you know, I had the rope marks on my back for like 2 days, and I was hurting for like 2 weeks, like afterwards. And so now when I see the ring and stuff, I don't get in the ring much unless it's for a shot, because like I know like I'm gonna be, if I take a slam, I'm gonna be hurting for like a week or more. But it all, like Evan said, you know, it reevaluated how, you know, we felt that maybe that was Dutch kind of teaching us a lesson, and, you know, that was the very beginning of us going down the road of Dark Side of the Ring. And so, you know, it was maybe smart on him to kind of get us to go through that, because it gave us a better appreciation. And when we're shooting with wrestlers in the reenactments, you know, I know not to get too crazy with doing a lot of takes of it, because I know there's the wear and tear of these moves on the body.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's making a wrestling documentary or anything, I think you gotta be humbled and take the body slam. I think that that you have to feel, even in some part. Obviously these wrestlers are doing it every night for 300 nights a year, which also is insane. But I think you have to know, and you have to respect it.
What's the thought process behind putting together these episodes? I'm looking at season 2 right now, and my personal, first of all, I love every episode, but my personal favorite was the cocaine and cowboy boots episode. Abrams started, because I'm a promoter myself in New Jersey, so I mean I've been a promoter up here for over 25 years, so I was very familiar with her because he was in New York. What is the thought process behind putting together a season? So Evan and Jason, you guys sit down with a pen and paper, and okay, this is good. Like, what made you guys think of the Herb Abrams story? I mean, basically that. Like, if you don't live up this way, or if you're not really like an insider of the wrestling business, you might not know who Herb Abrams was. So I thought that episode was fascinating.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest parts about the show, or one of the most exciting parts about Dark Side of the Ring to me, and from the perspective of making it, is when we do get to make these stories that we may not we don't know much about, and we're kind of stepping into the unknown and kind of uncovering these stories that for all intents and purposes would never make the airwaves in this decade. And that to me is the most exciting. And usually at the start of every season, me, Jason, and some of the other members of our staff, we'll just kind of brainstorm and jam on what episodes we should tell and what would be interesting. We've also obviously gotten a lot of feedback from fans and wrestlers with suggestions. I think we pretty much are aware of, like, I would say 90% of all possible stories you could tell for the show, because we've examined so many of them that including so many of them that we just haven't made yet, or just for other reasons. But the main criteria is that it has to sustain the hour, which most of them do, but it has to sustain the hour. It really has to have a really interesting human hook to it, something that a non-wrestling fan would be swept up into, and to be fascinated by. And other times we also like to inject some sort of blurred lines aspect, because that sort of breaking of the fourth wall, that sort of like gray area between who your character is and who you are in real life, and sometimes when those lines cross, that to us is like one of the more fascinating aspects of wrestling, because it's so unique to wrestling, and you don't really find that much in the other fields of entertainment or sports. So we try to hone in on that theme as much as possible, like when wrestling kind of spills out into reality, that kind of thing. So we try to find that first, and then it's just also, what's the best story? What is the most compelling? If you're to tell someone off the street, corner them and tell them the story, what are they going to be the most riveted by? And Herb Abrams is an interesting one. It's almost an anomaly in that way, because it was when we were actually putting together the original pitch materials for the show, before we had filmed anything. I had spoken to this fellow by the name of Sean Oliver, who does kayfabe commentaries, and I just, Jason and I kind of we were watching his kayfabe shoot interviews, because he's one of the first shoot interview guys. We've been watching his stuff for years, and so if anyone's going to know crazy wrestling stories, it's going to be this guy. So I picked up the phone and called him and just picked his brain, and what would be good for our show. And he's like, I got to think about it, but the one that really sticks out, the one that absolutely should be something you look into, is the Herb Abrams story. I'd never heard of Herb Abrams. I had no idea, but, he gave me the elevator pitch that had the baby oil and the baseball bats, and I was like, oh, man. And so I actually put it in the original pitch materials for the show, and then, but for whatever reason, when we were doing season 1, maybe it's because of my unfamiliarity with the subject matter that I didn't look into it enough. And then after season 1 came out, he was like, "Why didn't you do that story? I told you. We don't need a Montreal Screwjob story. We need the Herb Abrams story." And so so then he basically brought me on his podcast to grill me about, like, why didn't you do that? And then I actually, that was when we were making season 2. And I actually, the next day, like, feeling ashamed, I went into the office and I was like, "Guys, like, stop what we're doing. Let's do Herb Abrams. We got to do it." And we did. And thank God. Man, that was such one of the more exhilarating experiences, both in the interview process and obviously in the reenactment process. It was just absolutely wild. But yeah, man, one of my personal favorite episodes too.
During the filming of these shows, you get some access to some pretty cool places that normal people don't get to go. One of the things I always see, and I'm always very interested in, is Jim Cornette's, is it his attic, this room in his house where he appears to have every magazine, every print, every newspaper on pro wrestling ever made. What is it like going into like a Jim's house and seeing what essentially looks like a wrestling museum full of stuff?
The first time it was like absolutely mind-blowing, and it was like anxiety-inducing at the same time. Yeah, it was like sensory overload because it was like, man, like I literally just want to go through these bins and go through these magazines, and but it's like as like amazing as it is, it's kind of all for him, it's all like for him. And it's like, I don't know if he really wants people going through it or looking at it, because it's so organized in such a meticulous way that so like on one end I didn't want to be obtrusive, and on the other end it's like, God, I could spend a weekend in here just finding amazing photos and things. But yeah, absolutely one of our favorite stops on the road is to the Castle Cornet, because it's just it is a sight to behold.
It is, yeah. There's almost every room has has its own theme, and like the archive room is like, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a secret room in the house. And it's like when he opens it up and you walk through it, and it's just, like Evan was saying, it's just like as a wrestling fan, and if you're a fan of wrestling history, it's everything you've ever like dreamed of is there, because Jim is such an obsessive fan and collector and historian. And so, like, he knows where every single little piece of everything is in there, and it's amazing. And I look back now thinking, like, when we've been in there, we've been there a few times. It's like, it's so hard not to just rummage through everything, And he's been so good to us, and I'm sure there's been times we picked up a stack of cards and like shuffled through them and placed them back down, and he's probably like, but he's been like so good to us. He's so good to us.
His like, he's got like a drawer there that's because Jim Cornette was a wrestling photographer before he became a personality in the ring, and he has all of his every single photograph I think he had ever taken from the 70s and the 80s, and it's just meticulously organized in these drawers, and it's just like, man, like, where is the Jim Cornette coffee table book with all these photographs, because they're unbelievable. And so it's just a pleasure. Every time we go, I look forward to it so much. I always have a blast. He's so fun, and obviously also, as they say in the wrestling industry, working with him and doing interviews with Jim is like a night off in the ring, because that Jim is always going to be on. He's always he's the soundbite machine. You get exactly what you need when you leave, and it's so great for us in the edit, like in the edit room. All the editors love Jim Cornette because he makes it all work, in the edit room. For sure.
Absolutely. Now, season 3 takes place May the 6th. The debut episode is Brian Pillman. Again, Brian Pillman's going to be a topic. Nick Gage, the Collision in Korea, the Ultimate Warrior, Grizzly Smith, the Dynamite Kid. That's 6 episodes that have already been announced. I'm looking forward to all of them. Probably the one I'm most looking forward to is the episode on the Ultimate Warrior. Now, you guys grew up big wrestling fans. You know, this has to be probably one of the biggest episodes you guys done so far because, you know, what a story. You know, the Ultimate Warrior is one of the the biggest icons in the history of professional wrestling. Comes back to the WWE after all those years, gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, goes to WrestleMania the next day. Then he does this interview on Raw on that Monday night, and it just the words that he said were so surreal because the very next day he passed away. So you talk about my co-host Jay here at the beginning of the episode talks about how you guys do episodes that just regular non-wrestling fans can relate to. This is such a compelling story about the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, it's not a good story what happened, but you couldn't write a better story of what happened here. After all those years, he returns, gets inducted to the Hall of Fame, makes amends with everyone, goes on Raw, and the next day he has passed away. I mean, it was so shocking. I can only imagine what this episode is going to be like. You guys must have been watering at the mouth to do this episode because it's such a compelling story.
Well, yeah, the Ultimate Warrior, obviously, we both grew up, as huge fans of the Ultimate Warrior as kids. And I think, as wrestling fan, as you get older and, all the controversy that kind of goes with that, with Jim Hellwig and with Ultimate Warrior, you grow up with the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior documentary. Then, he comes back and, of course, the way he died. And I think it leaves a lot to wonder, and then, of course, you watch all these shoot interviews with wrestlers who trash him and, and say he's one of the, most contentious figures in wrestling. And you just kind of look at, like, he's always been this really enigmatic figure. Like, who is the guy behind the face paint? Who really was he, and what made him tick and what was his motivation? And I feel like because you just get like these two extreme versions of him. You get kind of today, like a very lionized version of him, and then, just probably 15 years prior, you got a very, contentious, controversial portrait of him. So it just kind of leaves a lot of questions, more questions than answers to really, about, this wrestler, because he was such an outsider. He was such an outsider that he was a bodybuilder that came into wrestling, and he didn't grow up with, he didn't have a dad that was a wrestler. He wasn't grandfathered in because he went to the matches at he was 12 years old and set up the ring. He came in basically from out of left field and then rose to the top faster than anybody. And so it's a really interesting story, but I think more than anything, it's like really parsing through that legacy and parsing through who this guy really was. And, it was a challenge to make the episode, because, it is still a subject that oddly people are guarded about, but I think we have a really a very, very, very compelling episode because, we did interview Warrior's, first wife, Sherry, who was there from the time he was still studying to be a chiropractor.
Oh,
this
wow.
guy was a chiropractor, so she was there when he was a chiropractor and saw the transformation of, okay, he's going to be a bodybuilder. Okay, now he's going to, then he meets Sting, and then they then they be the Freedom Fighters or Blade Runners, and then all the way until the rise to where he won the WWF Championship from Hogan, and then they separated shortly thereafter. So she was really there for the whole transformation and the whole rise, and so it's just a really intimate, interesting portrait of a very intimate portrait of Warrior and what it's kind of like to be sort of married to somebody in that world. It's really interesting.
I'm not sure exactly how old you gentlemen are, but were you guys watching wrestling around the time of WrestleMania 6?
Oh yeah,
Jason, you were for sure.
I was. Yeah, I was watching it live.
Oh.
It's still
Okay, Jason.
one
Here's
of
my
the
question for you then.
Yeah.
Jason, here's my question. Tommy and I are on opposite sides of this story, and so I just want to know: were you cheering for Hogan, or were you cheering for the Ultimate Warrior during the Ultimate Challenge there?
You know, it's interesting because, like, I was a huge fan of Hulk Hogan when I was a kid, but when Ultimate Warrior was on his rise, like, I was a huge Ultimate Warrior fan, like, and I was cheering for Ultimate Warrior. And so, you know, the way that ended and you saw him with, like, both belts, it was, like, you know, the craziest image, you know? Like, to be honest, like, my Ultimate Warrior action figure, like, was the champion of my toy box. Like, I put him through everyone. And, yeah, so, you know, like Evan was talking about, it's, you know, as a fan, and you grew up with, he was such a powerful figure for my imagination growing up. And then you start learning about the controversies and, like, the things he says, so it makes you kind of, like, battle with your does, I think, is, like, you know, you get to see who he was, you know, and how, you know, what made him into the person he is now. And so it makes me, I don't know, I better understand some of the choices, you know, that he made, or just how, you know, he became who he is. So yeah.
Psychological profile. Yeah.
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 Well, a lot of the times people say the stories that happen outside the ring are more interesting than the ones that take place inside the squared circle. Evan and Jason, you guys do an unbelievable job of bringing these stories back into people's vision, back into the main front, so that wrestling fans can relive them, but non-wrestling fans can kind of get hooked and understand a little bit about why we love the world of professional wrestling so much. Evan and Jason, before we let you go, Tommy and I both just want to thank you so much for taking the time. We know you guys are incredibly busy. It means the world to us that you came on our show and shared some of your story with us. We are looking forward to season 3. We're on pins and needles. We cannot wait. And before we let you go, is there anything about season 3 that you guys are very excited for fans of the show to see?
Oh man, there's so much. Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about it just before this phone call, before this interview. I was sitting here thinking, like, you know, the story of Grizzly Smith. You know, I like how if you grew up as a fan of wrestling documentaries and you watch, like, Beyond the Mat, and you saw that little section with, like, Jake the Snake Roberts, and he, like, talks about what happened to his sister and how his sister was kidnapped and possibly murdered. But it's only, like, this short moment in that documentary, and ever since I saw it, I think, Evan, you agree, it's always haunted us. It's always been a question, like, what happened there? Like, this crazy past Jake has that we've had several documentaries about him, but it's never, like, dove into this aspect of it. So that's one thing I was just thinking of before this interview. Like, man, that is going to be something for fans of the show and fans of wrestling, that we're diving into that story.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's like, this is a real kind of, like, nasty tease that I'm teasing here, but because we haven't announced it yet. But there's one episode, because, you know, right now it's just we've unveiled the first, you know, 7 episodes, because the Brian Pillman episode is actually 2. It's 2 parts. But the second half of the season, which we have yet to announce, I think is going to be announced very soon, is there's one episode there that is kind of I think one of the major Discovery episodes. I would say it's kind of in line with the Herb Abrams of this episode, like one of the deeper cut stories. And that episode, which we are just wrapping up right now, I think it has some of our best reenactments we've ever shot. I think it has some of the craziest interview moments. I think I cannot wait to unveil that episode, because that's been a blast to make. So, for sure.
Before you leave, just so you know, me and Jay here, we're both diehard viewers of your show. If you want to give us an exclusive of one of the episodes, you know, feel free before you guys head off, you know.
I would be shunned by my network. who've tried to keep, because it's interesting, because it's funny, because like you do an interview with some of these guys like Eric Bischoff or and then they'll just like they'll just oh yeah, I just did an interview for Collision in Korea, and it's like, no, why'd you tell everybody? So it's been really hard to like keep this under wraps, because wrestlers tell a phone, tell a friend, tell a wrestler, and it's so yeah, I think we have to exercise extreme protection, but hopefully we can unveil it soon.
Great. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and we're looking forward to season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring, and I'm sure all our listeners are as well. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah,
of course.
Thank you.
Take
all
care.
right, guys. Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
And there you have it. Dark Side of the Ring, Season 3 premieres on May the 6th, Jay. This is a couple weeks away. I'm really looking forward to it. The first 2 seasons have been absolutely phenomenal. And I think out of the 7 episodes they have announced so far, Pillman being the 2-parter, the Warrior one, man, is definitely the one I'm looking forward to seeing the most.
I'm excited about that one, too, just because, like the boys were saying, he was such an interesting person outside of the ring. As fans at that time, we knew the Ultimate Warrior as what was being presented on our screen. As we grew up and we gained access to YouTube and other outlets, you kind of got to see the man behind the makeup.
At the Wrestling Collector, which is located at 2772 State Route 23 in Stockholm, New Jersey, this Saturday morning between 10 a.m. and noon. WWE Hall of Famers, the Rock and Roll Express, and Savio Vega will both be appearing live at the Wrestling Collector this Saturday. You can come out and get autographed pictures and get your photos with them. If you have your own items as well, you can bring them to the store and have it signed by them. So it's be real cool. Rock and Roll Express and Savio Vega this Saturday morning, 10 a.m. to noon. Again, the Wrestling Collector is on Route 23 in Stockholm, New Jersey. And then this Monday, we have another Monday Night Virtual, and it's going to be a big one, Jay. We have former AWA World Heavyweight Champion, WWE Hall of Famer, one of the biggest names in wrestling, the Lariat, Stan Hansen, the man that broke Bruno Sammartino's neck, will be a live virtual signing this Monday night.
That is a big one, Tommy. I'm excited for that. Stan was one of these guys that as a kid I would read about in the magazines, and he came across as legit tough. I was a little bit scared of him as a kid. I'm excited to see what he's like in real life, hear the stories he has to tell. I even got a kick out of last Monday when you had your Extreme Signing Roundtable, and your host was plugging Stan Hansen. All the guys at the table had a story to tell about how hard Stan could hit in the ring. And so I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to get an autograph and hear some stories from Stan Hansen.
Yeah, anyone that wants to get a personalized autograph photo of Stan Hansen, you can just head over to our website. It's 80'swrestlingcon.com. Again, 80'swrestlingcon.com. You select the photo that you want, then you'll tune in live to our Facebook page this Monday night. The link for the Facebook page is on 80'swrestlingcon.com, and you can watch Stan Hansen sign your photo live for you, and then give you a shout out as well, and then we'll ship your photo out to you after the signing. Again, it's this Monday night, Stan Hansen, from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time on our Facebook page, and you can head over to 80'swrestlingcon.com now and get your photo. So we have the Rock and Roll Express and Savio Vega on Saturday, Jay, at the store. Then Sunday is my birthday. And then Monday is the Stan Hansen virtual signing.
Well, happy birthday, Tommy.
Thank you.
Is there anything special going on at the Wrestling Collector on Sunday to celebrate the big day?
Well, Sunday is typically my day off. I have my mother work the store on Sunday because she lives literally a mile away from the store. So I need a day off to be with my family, and typically Sunday is that day. But not this Sunday, Jay, because guess what? I have the same birthday as my mom, so I can't have my mother work on her birthday. So I'm working the store on my birthday this Sunday.
Well, that's fantastic, man. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to your mom. I love that she pulls the Sunday shift at the store. Is she as knowledgeable about pro wrestling as you are?
No, not at all, man. Not at all.
I bet customers love chatting her up, though.
Yeah, I can't imagine a customer asks her about Killer Kowalski, what she's going to answer, you know?
Well, Tommy, before we sign off for the week here, there is one last segment that we have to get to. We like to end every episode of 80's Wrestling, the podcast, with a segment called Ask Tommy Sheik. This is where Tommy steps aside and passes the microphone to Tommy Sheik, a long-lost relative of the Hall of Famer, the Iron Sheik. And so, Tommy, if you want to pass the mic over there to Tommy Sheik here, we got a question for him.
Let me get him. Tommy Sheik.
Yeah, bring him into the room.
He's just coming out of the bathroom. Tommy Sheik, come over here. You're going to end the show. Okay, he's coming. Hello.
All right, Tommy Sheik, are you ready, Tommy Sheik?
Hello,
Tommy Sheik. This is 80's Wrestling, the podcast. This is Jumpin' Jay. How you doing?
First of all, I'd like to say hello to all the wrestling fans all around the world, Baba. They know the Iron Sheik.
You're absolutely right. Everybody knows and loves the Iron Sheik, sir. Sir, we just had an episode with the creators of The Dark Side of the Ring, Evan Husney and Jason Eisener. I'm sure you've seen the show. My question is, you're such a well-known figure throughout the entire world. I'm kind of surprised that you don't have your own show on network TV. I'm just wondering if a producer came to you and asked you to be the host of a network TV show, would you be up for that?
First of all, I'd like to say hello again to all the wrestling fans all around the world, Baba. They know the Iron Sheik. I rule the Wrestling Federation champ. I am the WWF Tag Team champ. Not that jabroni, Hollywood brawn, piece of shit, Hulk Hogan. They want to show the Iron Sheik. No problem, Baba. No problem.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I'm sure your fans are curious. What kind of show would the Iron Sheik be interested in hosting?
No more questions.
I pushed the limits too far. He's a man of few words. Sheik, thank you so much for joining us.
What did you say, Jay? He was very upset. He just took off. He said, no more questions. I don't know what happened.
Listen, he's a very passionate man. I hope I didn't upset him too much. I hope he'll come back next week and rejoin us.
You got heat with him. What did you say to Tommy Sheik?
I walk on eggshells around him. He's a very passionate man. I don't know what to say to him.
You piece of shit, motherfucker! You have too many fucking questions! You have too many questions, you Minnesota motherfucker! No more questions!
Well, all right. I guess that's our time for today. Awesome episode. Tommy, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back, man. I apologize.
Man, listen. He's a passionate man. He's got a lot going on. I just appreciate his time. Hopefully he'll come back on the episode next week. But what a show today, Tommy. Evan and Jason were absolutely fantastic.
Awesome.
I can't wait for season 3.
Yeah, man, that was great. And Evan and Jason, they were both great. And next week's episode right here of 80's Wrestling, the podcast, Jay, is going to be another big one. We have the leader of the Four Horsemen, J.J. Dillon, joining us right here on the show next week. We're going to talk about his career and also talk about the amazing movie he was in, documentary 350 Days, which I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet, Jay. It was absolutely phenomenal. A good friend of mine produced it. So I want to talk about that documentary next week and talk to JJ about his career.
That is going to be a conversation that you won't want to miss. J.J. Dillon from the Four Horsemen. What a career he had, the stories he can tell. Looking forward to that one. Anything else before you take us home, Tommy?
That's about it, man. Just thank you, everyone, for the continued support. Listen to the podcast every week. Getting tons and tons of feedback, Jay. We appreciate it. and I'm sure we're going to get a ton of feedback after today's absolutely phenomenal episode with Evan and Jason. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. I hope to see some of you guys this Saturday at the Wrestling Collector to meet the Rock and Roll Express and Savio Vega, and this Monday night virtual from 7 to 10 p.m. with Stan Hansen. And until next week, hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll catch you here right next week on 80's Wrestling, the podcast.